So one of the main issues we hear at Inner Solutions are people who have weight struggles, whether they're suffering from anxiety, depression, or any other mental health ailment. Weight management is a piece that will absolutely show any holes in your game. And so what we wanted to do is bring in a top-level professional, a nutrition coach, to give us the how and give us the why, talk about what are some emotional blocks that he's experienced and he's been able to help clients coach through. So with us right now is Jefferson from Essential Health Systems. Jefferson, thanks so much for being here, brother.
Oh, thank you so much, Jim, for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Now, people don't know this, but this is actually the 5th time we've started this because of technical difficulties. So we're soldiering through no matter what. Pull the curtain back. We don't need to be so polished and perfect. But I had a long conversation with Jefferson. He helped a friend of mine lose a bunch of weight and still in the process. And I was amazed at just how intentional his system was. I was amazed at his ability to articulate. And I just asked him to come on the show. And he was so pumped and willing. So, man, we really, really are grateful. Can you explain to people what it is that you do?
Yeah, well, I think you hit right on it. There's a lot of why reasons people want to get started in losing weight, and there's a lot of ways to go and try to lose weight. And I think the biggest thing for me is really making sure that clients are set up for long-term success. It's not enough just to give someone fish. You want to teach them how to fish for a lifetime. And if you can go and make a very clear, actionable game plan, and break down complex concepts into simple ideas to people, it's a lot, it's pretty consistent getting good lifelong results. And that's really anytime you're talking about weight loss, it really needs to be a long-term game plan, not just a quick immediate fix. That doesn't help anything.
Definitely. What got you into doing this, into the weight loss coaching and the nutrition coaching?
Yeah. So I was, after college, I started down a road of sales and hollow money chasing efforts that I really just wasn't a fan of.
Yeah.
I was doing the door-to-door solar panel residential sales and hated it, hated life, was not in a good spot. And I was fortunate enough to have a friend I went to college with whose father owned a private, essentially nutrition coaching company. It was called New England Fat Loss at the time. It's no longer a business anymore, but basically, I kind of went there just looking for something different and kind of just fell in love with helping people. I had a career in sales and in finance, and I, for a while in my life, didn't put a lot of emotional or value in emotional satisfaction or like helping people and feeling good about that. It didn't really mean as much to me, but working with a few thousand clients and just, kind of seeing people's lives turn around and just even having a small part in that is, I take it really seriously, and I'm very blessed to have ended up in where I am. I do think one of the few things I actually could go to work day in, day out and not want to bash my skull against the wall.
It's amazing, man. Absolutely amazing. And I mean, in that line of work, did you see a lot of transformations with people? Did you see a lot of, I can imagine how fulfilling that must have been.
Yeah. I mean, it's, if you take someone, obviously, again, everyone comes in with different, starting points and different hurdles and issues they have going on. But, if someone ended up coming to my office, it was because they acknowledged they had a problem. And it's something where if you can go and, I think we're going to probably use the word why a lot, as we should, because if you don't have a good reason why you're doing something, especially when it's something as stressful and like mentally demanding as being really strict about what you consume for weeks on end. I mean, that's something you got to be in for. And if your head's not in it, it's just going to be tough to sustain it, get the results, to not get frustrated. And, that's really the biggest thing, just making sure that people understand why they're doing it. And it makes it a lot easier on my end as well. If they're going in, seeing the results, loving it, it makes it a whole lot easier to guide someone through.
Yeah, they start to get the momentum and ride the wave, definitely. So what are some of the key elements, some of the key differences that you provide for clients as opposed to them trying to do it on their own? What are some things that the value that working with a nutrition coach like yourself provide as opposed to just somebody trying to have a diet plan on their own?
Yeah, I think, the biggest thing for a lot of people is if we were able to go and force ourselves essentially to go and eat righteously clean for long enough, we probably would have already done it. And so the biggest thing that people are going to someone like me for is accountability, and just making sure that, if you cheat, it's not just you that you're sabotaging. And I think a lot of people, myself honestly included, it's a lot easier for me to tell myself something and then the next day not do it and be like, oh, wow, F me, I didn't do what I'm supposed to do. But if, the way our program works is every single morning, someone's texting their weight into me. So someone being on the other end of that is definitely a reason where a lot of those, something in the middle of the night or, whenever the pitfall time typically is for the person, knowing that someone's on the other end of that phone, essentially, waiting to hear, most likely good news in terms of the scale each morning. That's definitely something that a lot of people are finding, I'd say, a big chunk of their value from. It's just someone to keep you accountable. I think the other big one is, at least I can safely say with my, what we do is, clarity in terms of like the procedure. And again, having a very clear, defined, step-by-step daily protocol to follow. The more people, I guess, the more it's left up to interpretation, the harder it is to replicate the same results. And so one of the easy fallbacks for me is, especially after seeing it thousands of times, if I know if someone's doing it, they're going to get the results. In fact, I can tell day in and day out, I can tell if they did it. Their scale tells me everything that they did or not. But, making sure that, because we get specific in this program, there's a specific range of ounces for something like protein per meal, and if we are, kind of winging it versus like measuring it, that's something where it's harder for me as the coach to then go and adjust adequately. Because I don't know, if you're saying I got this much protein last night, but I'm hungry, it's hard for me to say I got this much plus, add an extra ounce or two, because we don't exactly. And so, keeping everything very specific and completely not open-ended, which is the big thing with, nutrition, as there's a ton of information, like butter's good, butter's bad, butter's good.
Right. Yeah.
Unfortunately, a lot of the nutritional information conflicts with itself depending on who you ask. And so I think there's so much swirling in this cloud of information that having someone who can just basically be like, X, Y, Z, do that, shove everything off to the side, just do this and you'll be golden. That's something that really, people take comfort in that. And I totally get that.
What's the level of intentionality? I mean, do you talking about, because when we talked on the phone, you were talking food plan, like, are you talking about the time they eat as well as you talked about specific supplements for specified to the individual?
Yeah. So, okay. A couple parts there. So everyone is going to be picking from like the same list of lean proteins, non-starchy, non-sugary vegetables, fruits low on the glycemic index, but foods that are just objectively the best for people. Okay. And isolating out a vegan vegetarian argument. But, we want to make sure that we're only putting in good nutrients. The fluids is basically just water, black coffee, and tea. So in terms of what we physically consume, it's very, very defined. And it's a very binary, this is good or this is not. I don't care if it's so much like a banana being slightly starchier and sugarier than we would want for that, in that sort of initial sort of more rigid first phase. That's something where if it was a banana or a cookie, they're both going to slow us down. It's a very all or nothing like system in here. And so, yes, it is very deliberate in terms of what foods are on that list. That doesn't really change person to person, barring like weird food allergies or something like that. The amount of water someone consumes is entirely based on essentially what they weigh. And that's an easy enough system to follow. And, we just want to make sure that, I think the big difference person to person is just sort of the coaching style and how you approach the individual. Did I answer the entire question?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's a great answer. I mean, the only other question would be, is there like a specific time you tell people to eat, or is it customizable? How much does it matter when people are eating?
So I leave it as vague, ideally as lunch and dinner. I am a big advocate of intermittent fasting, which is basically just consolidating the window of time that you eat within to make this window of not eating longer, because
Mm-hmm.
that's when the body eats up fat. That's when it gets to produce and rebalance out hormones and all these good behind the scenes things. So, but with that said, so ideally it's 2 meals a day, but I care very little about when exactly those are. It's not, you
Mm-hmm.
need to eat at noon, you need to eat at 7. That's
Mm-hmm.
it. Everyone's work schedule is different. I got truck drivers who are eating whenever they can. People, you know,
Yeah. We lost you for a second, but that's okay. It was a good, the
yeah.
last part we got was truck drivers who are eating when they
Oh,
can.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, so it sounds like you're a component of the intermittent fasting. Is there a specific window that you recommend? Is it a 16-hour fasting
Yeah.
window?
8 to 10 hours is ideal, but like what I'll say to people is like, if you eat at 10 o'clock, or, if you eat at noon and then again at 11 p.m. because you get home at night, like you're far better off eating at the theoretical wrong time versus
Mm-hmm.
shorting the body.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
gotcha.
so yeah, the timing is very secondary to, are the foods clean? Are they prepared without, sauces or sugars or oils or whatever, the things that are
Gotcha.
going to slow us down, that kind
Yeah.
of thing.
So I want to shift into some client stories, and so you're meeting people who maybe have let themselves go for the most part, I assume, or who are just wanting to tighten up and feel better. What are some of the most common stories you hear from your clients about how they've accumulated so much fat, or how they've so much time has passed since they were intentionally eating?
Okay. So awesome. And before I get into, I guess, little specific things, I would say there's typically a singular event that happens in someone's life, and usually they can pinpoint it. And they say, I was doing the same thing for however many years up until this point, never had a weight problem, but something happened here. And basically from that point, the scale starts to trickle upwards. And for a while in this part, they feel like they're doing the same thing that they were already,
Mm.
but something shifted. Now you could look at things like, let's say, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying guilty. I did the same
Oh,
thing. If something was working for a while, took a break, and then didn't work again. Yeah, absolutely. I love
100%.
that.
For like men, I think like especially like college athletes or even pro athletes, I've worked with a couple. They get used to eating a certain way because that's their life. They
Yeah.
go to the gym, they're burning thousands of calories a day, and they're eating 3, 4, 5, 6,000 calories a day, and they're totally fine. But once you get out of that sport or you get injured, that shift without going and shifting how you eat, that's when you can slowly get into trouble.
Mm.
For women either having children or going through menopause, there's frequently one, I think it's often actually after the first child, women do actually a noticeably better job rebounding from, but the second, the third, anything beyond the first,
Mm.
it gets harder and harder for them to reset back to even close to what they were before. So that's a big thing for women for sure. Sometimes it's just a career move. Or, again, some big shift in life, whether you move and your schedule's changed, if you just have to start working different hours, those kind of shifts that I'd say disrupt the daily norm are what can, because again, no one wakes up 20 pounds up from where they were overnight. It's
Right.
always a slow little
Mm.
developing issue.
Mm.
And that's the same way you get rid of it too, to spoil some of the later content. It's a bunch of little things that you just start doing right over and over and over again.
Mm. Mm.
So if, so I do think usually people can look at that thing or, what they were doing, eventually something changes with it. And that's typically what causes the scale to ascend upwards.
Got you. So pivoting into the why, what are some of the most common stories you hear of why people want to lose fat or want to feel better, want to lose weight, get their nutrition in line?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most common is just, I feel like crap. Like on a morning, noon, and night basis, a lot of people just feel like crap, and they're sick of it. For some people, if it gets worse, and I should take a step back and just to cover my bases, it's not just obviously the obese people that
Mm-hmm.
I work with. Plenty of people I think feel underserved who are, let's say, 10, 15 pounds away from their goal. Like I worked with my girlfriend's mother. She had done one of those shake diets for forever and had like 10, 15 pounds to lose, hit a plateau for months. And she was already getting, 6, 7 days a week at the gym. Those people often also feel like their side's not heard. in general. But, as far as what drives a lot of people to, want to embark on something like this, yeah, generally feeling crappy. Like if you get winded going up your driveway or upstairs or putting your shoes on, like there's usually one morning or something where you're like, wow, this is it. I'm done. I can't do this anymore. This is absurd. Or, sometimes people's doctors put them on medications, or if they have a genetic predisposition towards like diabetes or blood pressure issues or cardiac problems down the road, that's something where people, I would say, not so much in response to a bad thing happening. As I'm sure a lot of your clients understand, like some people are just like, I don't like the way I look. I don't feel good about myself. And I want to, improve that. So that there's a wide range of things that get you to the door, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, when you're dealing with a population that has kind of let themselves go or has deprioritized nutrition, what are some of the most common emotional blocks you see from clients on why they aren't able to have achieved that before or get the results they want, both outside of your program and in your program as well? What do you see kind of put your finger on the pulse of nutrition right now, man?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of layers to that question. And again, I think the biggest thing for me and the first barrier for people are, emotional blocks, like you said, is first acknowledging that there's a problem. I'm not an expert in the grieving process, but I'm pretty sure that, acknowledging that there's an issue is the first thing. And, like for a lot of, let's say, clients who are successful, like our buddy Dwayne, to shout him out, he was talking to a friend who's like, wow, you lost a ton of weight, or I think it was a coworker, but people can be like, wow, I love your results. I wish I could do that. But then when the successful person, even in front of them, who's living, breathing evidence that you could achieve this too, a lot of people actually aren't ready in here. And I'll disqualify like people coming and seeking me out if I get the sense at all that they're not into it. It's not a process that I can force you through.
Sure.
You gotta want it.
So what are some of those things that you notice about people? What are some of the things that prick your ears up and say, hey, this person's probably not ready?
Well, the biggest thing for me would be like, no one doesn't understand like proteins, veggies, fruits are important, or that water's important. But if you get someone who's like, I can't for the life, like I would rather die. I've had people say this tons of times. I would rather die than take dairy out of my coffee in the morning.
Wow. Yeah.
Like, so something like that where, people say that in jest, and that's not something that's like, it's a holdup too often. People can, it's, for me, the job is like, okay, let's take a step back. Let's talk about why that little bit of inflammation is actually shooting you in the foot every single day you do that. Most people will come around once they hear it, not just a, you can't do this, because no one likes that sound. No one likes a, you can't do this, I forbid it. No one responds to that. But if we can, if we can go in and sort of see like what, like I've had someone who's like in his later 70s, and he's like, I drink every single day. I have a few beers every single day. I will not give that up. And I said, look, buddy, everything else, I think you would crush. But if you can't give that up, this isn't going to work for you, just because that would be a little bit of something every day. And he appreciated it. There's very few times like people may be like, oh, I really wanted to get healthy. But if I go in there and I'm like, I get you want to get healthy, but if you're not really willing to sacrifice this other thing, your shot of getting there is next to nil. And I can't help you, unfortunately. Now, if you want to take a second, take some time, reevaluate your position on that, I'll be here ready and willing to work with you. But, that's something where if it's something they say that they do, in that first 6-week phase, I actually tell people not to be working out, which sounds very unintuitive on the surface. And there's a reason for it. I can explain why if you'd like, but that's something where, if someone's built up like that routine, like they may have been set, because a lot of people, before they get to me, try things on their own. Before they seek expert advice, you try to do it yourself. And, I do think that like, if we can go and, really just unearth all those little things that you do that might be tripping you up. And then my job is to explain to you why those little things are harming you more than you think they are. But if anyone challenges me on those and is unwavering in their position, saying I can't do life without these things, then you and typically, these are as extreme as like I can't do black coffee, or I can't eat seafood, or I hate all vegetables that are green, or I don't like water, or I can't give up my morning run. Those are typically the difficult to work around stuff for me. But again, usually most people can understand once I explain why it's important that we don't do those things for now. They usually get it and not relent, but
Gotcha.
they give it up.
Yeah. Can you explain why you recommend people don't work out for you said the first 6 weeks?
Yeah. And so the biggest thing is, so in this very strict six weeks, we're looking at proteins, veggies, fruits, water, and this isn't necessarily something I would advise people go and do just like on their own. And obviously eat clean, hydrate. Those are great things.
Right.
But in that 6 weeks, the body is in a very, very deep state of fat burning. A lot of people call it like a ketogenic state. I don't actually think it's one-to-one the same, but in our heads, it's easy to visualize like that. But anytime that you cut the body off from garbage for long enough that it starts to seek pre-existing body fat to pull the calories from to sustain you throughout the day. When you're in that state, you getting exceedingly active, your brain will tell your stomach that because you need this extra energy right then, your body starts to believe it will need that degree of energy in the near future and will try to store calories rather than burning through them as fast as it can.
Gotcha.
So it sort of just pulls your body in two different directions. One saying, I want to burn because that's what I'm feeding it for. And that's what it's looking to do. But the other side says, well, now you're demanding there's more in the tank. So I also need to then have the person consume more food, because obviously if they don't, where's the protein going to be coming from? And the vitamins and minerals is from what's already inside of us. And that's the worst thing that can happen. So it breaks down the equation. But again, it just tells your body both to, while it's trying to burn, store as well, and just make neither one really effective. So after that 6 weeks, I only encourage getting active. I don't want anyone to think like I'm saying activity is just objectively bad, because it's not.
Right. No, yeah. Of course.
And that first phase, nice and lazy, as I like to say.
Yeah. It's actually almost feels like it would be tougher to sit at home without the old coping food and comfort food and everything. And so it feels like you're almost resetting a mindset as well as the physical state. So typically, how long do you, on average, coach clients for?
Well, I would say typically, I'd say about like 6 to 9 months. More when I was in doing it for a company. Basically, I'm in daily correspondence with these people for that 6 weeks, and then there's a secondary game plan, and that's kind of when we work back in like cheat days and things like that, so you can actually go and enjoy life, because obviously that's really important. Is to not feel kind of in food jail for the rest of the time. That's not sustainable. But yeah, I mean, I do think that really just making sure that that we stick to it. And I just lost my train of thought again, dude.
You're good. The reason I'm asking, I was asking how long you work with them, because I want to know. Yeah. Well, no, I want to know what are some of the key elements that you see in people's mindset that help them sustain results. Because working with you day to day for 6 weeks, they have that accountability, they have that positive or negative feedback. Yep. What are some of the key pieces? Yeah.
So this is where I think, again, and this is something big through that first 6 weeks as well, is we need to make sure that we're constantly reminding ourselves of the why, and when, because cravings will come in that 6 weeks. There's no chance that they don't. No one, if someone has a serious amount of weight to lose, it's because they have vices like anyone else. And, to say that those things won't come just because the scale's dropping really quickly and you're enthusiastic is, it's lunacy. It's not going to happen. So keeping people's brains focused on the long term, and jumping back to like blocks that could mess someone up, like in that 6 weeks, it's easy to get really wrapped up in like a single day's weigh-in. Like you can do everything perfect by the book. Our buddy Dwayne could tell you this, and you could gain a pound the next day being perfect. Now, if you cheat, it's a different story. You're going to gain weight. That's easy. We know why. Being perfect, it can be so frustrating being like, I've been great for the last however many days, did everything by the book, and I still gained weight today. What the F? And thinking, and in that moment, you have two choices. You have, am I going to be upset and curse the heavens and be like, why is this happening to me? I've done everything right, and today didn't go great, and let that lead to a future bad decision that will then further cost you results? Or do you go in that point and you say, look, I know today's not great, but as my coach said, it's not a reflection of what I did unless I cheated. But it's about making sure that we go and keep our heads looking long into the future, because that's what matters. It's not, whether if you want to lose 30 pounds or you want to come off of insulin, there's a lot of little steps that get you there. And I would rather keep people like Bill Belichick, look at the process, not the result. Look at the little things that go into your day to day, which is why being specific is very important. And if we can concern ourselves more with the little stuff we put in, as opposed to just the result you get the next day, that makes it a whole lot less stressful, which is something that definitely helps keep people in the long run adhering to it. And, frankly, the people who crush the 6 weeks, and, lose, like, I don't even think I said an average at all, but like women typically in the 6 weeks probably lose 20, 30 pounds or so. Men's probably about 30 to 40 or so.
Holy shit. Wow.
It's a serious program. I very much believe that I've cracked the formula for how to healthily. Obviously, it's not, you don't want to starve yourself and lose weight. That's the worst thing you can do. But it's a very streamlined process. It's been honed down. I did not create it. I just spent a lot of time observing it and, seeing people go through that kind of thing. But, we got to make sure, obviously, that, we go and make it long-term sustainable. And again, that's just about keeping people focused on the, the ultimate goal, not the little setbacks along the way.
Yeah. Do you see a change in people's kind of mental health or mental state, or even just general state emotionally when they go through this 6 weeks, this gigantic detox period?
Oh my God. It's night and day for a lot of these people.
Yeah.
If you can go and change, I think what I was trying to get to in the last question, but if you can go 6 weeks and take off 30 pounds, let's say that whatever thing in the future happens to you, that tragedy that, again, if you want to look into people's future, like for our buddy Dwayne, he's down 30 something pounds in about 6 weeks. But what's to stop when his job changes, or the next quarantine hits, or a family member passes away, or like I've had clients who in that 6 week, their houses burned down. It's happened multiple times. Things that obviously are going to throw you off your game. And the people who go and were militant through that 6 weeks, they know what to fall back on. They have a very solid imprint in their brain of what clean eating looks like. And so the people who don't forget that long term, again, I'm never after that 6 week going to ask someone go weeks on end, never having, cheat meals, food fun, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
But the people who cheat through that time are far less likely to struggle in the future and then auto put themselves back into it, and I think the further away from, let's say, that first 6 weeks when communication is very consistent, very open, a lot of people don't assume, like, they don't want to reach out to me 6 months, a year, 2 years down the road when they're struggling, even before it was my own clients, it was just the company. I just built, a lot of good relationships there, but, a lot of people still feel weird reaching out, even if they're struggling. But just having that thing that works to fall back on whenever shit hits the fan in the future, that really helps long term, with avoiding the issue again down the road when the inevitable happens.
Let's talk a little bit, pivot into just some road bumps that people will have. When you have a client who has a day that they wake up and they're past their 6 weeks, but they just don't have the energy to exercise, or they just feel like they're kind of getting run down with their diet. What are some ways that you're able to coach them to help them through the block? What have you found successful that works with clients to just give them a little boost and help them get over whatever the momentary or that, tough time they're going through is?
I think something that honestly works for me is not really trying to get them to alter that day when they feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to be honest, I don't think if you're just not feeling it, I don't think my best approach would be, okay, we'll figure it out. To be honest, I think the best approach is like, let's call a spade a spade. You know, if we want to, let's talk about what it is. If it's something that's going to persist, if it's something that has a timeline on it, but you know, just making sure that we talk about the average day. To me, the average day, and there being more average days than non-average days. And so, you know, if you're someone who's hitting the gym pretty consistently, I'm sure there's going to be a day, you know, maybe after you go and have a cheat night, you don't want to get back on it the next morning. But, you know, I think as long as we, I think, acknowledge that it's okay to sometimes have those days, you know, like if you're regular at the gym and then miss a day, as long as that not going doesn't translate into several days of not going,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not at all concerned. You know, there's many days when I don't want to eat clean, even when it was the day I was supposed to eat clean. Or the same thing with getting active. It's not a perfect system, but I think it's about saying, hey, that's okay. You know, if you do not feel like it this day, that's all right. But you know, on the back end, there's going to be more work to do. You know, that's to me what it's always about, whether it's a single cheat day or, you know, we're just not feeling it or we're in a funk. We want to make sure that we, again, keep our eyes on that long-term thing. You know, is this funk that we're in, you know, greater than sign the ultimate mission of staying healthy and,
Mm-hmm.
you know, control the scale and off of meds, all that other stuff, you know. So, you know, there's certainly things that, you know, I guess like little pep talky things I could say to people, but again, I think framing it back to the overarching long-term mission
Mm-hmm.
is always the approach. And then, you know, that leaves it up to them. You know, I think people find it a lot more empowering over time if, you know, if someone cheats, like, I'm not going to ream you out.
Mm-hmm.
That's not my coaching style. My boss absolutely would have. He would have made you feel bad about it. And, you know, part of it was he's an older guy and I'm, you know, in my 20s talking to, you know, because we were a pretty pricey program, like C-level executives and business owners and people that aren't used to being told you need to do X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
Those kind of people, again, just being like, you're forbidden from this. Like, you can't take a day off. You can't have this tonight.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. You know, so I think, again, framing it back to the overarching why or the mission of why we did this is always the best approach. And then if the person's serious about it still, they'll work themselves out of it. I wouldn't worry about a single day or a couple days here and there. It's about the average day.
I think it's so interesting, and it leads into the next question I wanted to ask perfectly, because I recognize, not just in diet and nutrition, but in any walk of life, that can sound a lot like people's inner talk. The kind of the pressure and the feeling like you missed a day, you know, it's kind of all is lost, the black or white thinking like that. So I love that approach of alleviating the pressure. So the next question I want to ask is, how, when you have a client who kind of gets caught in a feedback loop or a downward spiral of shame or a self-defeating cycle of thinking, have you recognized that in clients before, and what's your approach, and kind of, do you try to bring them back? Are you trying to letting them on their own? Do they leave the program? What tends to happen?
Well, so I think you need to understand in this field that a lot of people who have been battling these kind of things like weight issues or health issues their entire life, especially if someone's been overweight for as long as they can remember, there's usually some self-esteem or depression that's been sprinkled in there throughout however long of their lives. There's a lot of stress involved with the scale, and I think this is where, when someone comes to you as the coach, your initial job is to figure out what they need. Obviously we want to lose weight, we want to get healthier, but how we get to me is different person to person. And you got to understand, and I think really where the finesse comes in being a good coach is knowing how hard you can push people. I think everyone is ultimately going to have some sort of setback. And if if you've done the digging with that client and have enough rapport to them to know that, they may have tendencies to spiral out of control. And if, they may be that kind of person who they misstep once and then they're cursing their own names for the rest of the week. That kind of thing. That's my job to identify in that person and not put them in that headspace. Or if I notice them heading into that headspace, I need to come in and course correct them out of it. And so that's where, whether it's the person needs just more positive reinforcement. There are some guys who could lose 2 pounds and I'm like, good work. There's also gentlemen who lose 2 pounds and I'm like, dude, that's freaking awesome. I'm so proud of you, and those two people probably needed it more like that, or at least I think they do. Sometimes, I really think a lot of it just boils down to, figuring out sort of how sensitive they are, because you need to push someone. I can't just let something like cheating go unaddressed entirely, right? That's not an option. That helps no one. So again, we're at a couple decision points. Let's say someone who I think has the tendency to put themselves into an awful headspace as the result of the scale going up a pound through, let's say they didn't cheat. They feel they were perfect, right? And they genuinely feel that, right? Mm-hmm. So if you come at them and be like, dude, what's going on? They're gonna be like, I did everything perfect. What do you mean? I did something wrong. Whereas some people, they just want to be told, I hear you. They want to know that, like, yeah, you're up a pound today, but if you've been good the last couple days, my money's on it being a good weigh-in tomorrow morning, and you keep, again, this is why you need to do your due diligence when picking up clients is, you got to figure out what makes them tick, because that's, frankly, if you tell me you're trying in the beginning, like let's say when I'm onboarding them, if you tell me I want to get healthy because, I got kids on the way and I want to be around them to play in the park and throw football around, you best believe if you start either dicking around or screwing around,
that's fine.
Or just not taking it seriously, you better believe that I will throw back, frankly, your words back in your face, because it doesn't matter what I say. What I think doesn't actually influence your decisions. How you feel in the moments when the cravings come, that's the time when I need either my voice or their own voice in their head to keep them on the right path. And so I think, it's understanding your client and really just having a good feel for people. And that's one of the reasons I love this job so much. And what keeps it interesting is that fine line of motivation and encouragement, but even being bad cop. You got to know when to play each card in your hand and what's going to be most effective and what they need to hear. And I've absolutely said the wrong thing before. Like, I'm not perfect by any means.
Sure. Welcome to the club, buddy.
Yeah. And sometimes it's oftentimes the people who reject your words the most are often the people who need it the most, is what I found.
Wow.
And the greatest insecurity and the greatest defenses built up in front of them. But those are the best success stories on the other end of it. The people who are crazy skeptics saying this will never work. And like anytime anything goes wrong in that 6 weeks, they're sending me a novel of a message saying like, this is stupid. It doesn't work. But you get to the end of the 6 weeks, they're super happy. Life feels better. And yeah, that's when I get a lot of satisfaction.
Man, I love that. I love what you said about the words that they want to hear the least are the words that they need to hear the most. Usually, that's such a true point. So it sounds like you're pushing people to their edge, and then sometimes just throwing back their why in front of them, or sometimes using the positive reinforcement, and sometimes just the straightforward accountability. I love it, man. Absolutely love it. So let's steal some of your secrets right now. If you had to distill down some advice for people, the key elements for people who want to lose fat, maintain a healthy lifestyle physically, what are those most important elements that you emphasize in your program?
Sure. Number one is hydrate. There is no substitute for water. You're awesome. Cheers to you, Jim.
Cheers, brother.
So there's no substitute for water. Not getting too little, not getting too much of it. Not many people are worried about over fluiding, but that can be just as dehydrating as under fluiding. So, I'd say typically in general, half your weight in fluid ounces is close, but most people want to add a few pounds. But so hydrating is critically important. Cut the soda, get on black coffee. Make sure that we're not sabotaging ourselves because of things that we're drinking. That's the easiest way. Like you can, again, I always want to minimize people getting frustrated by what they're doing. And so imagine someone who's eating perfectly clean 100% of, let's say, 3 months straight, but they have soda every single meal. They're going to get, probably very minimal progress because they're still shooting themselves in the foot. But they still could be like, what the heck's going on? I'm eating perfect, but there's other things there to slow them down. So hydrating is definitely number one. Can't avoid that one. The next biggest one, and this is probably the biggest trade secret that I have to offer, is a lot of people focus on like calories, calorie counting, and which I'm not going to say is bad. You can look at weight and try to make it, simplify it like calories in, calories out, but that's absolute nonsense. And like 1,000 calories of blueberries and 1,000 calories of Doritos have radically different effects on the body, so it's not quite a calories in, calories out issue. I want people examining sort of what they're putting in on a daily basis. And, if there's a notes section at all, the only things I'd really want you to write down, but we need to understand that grains, dairy, corn, starches, and sugars. Again, grains, dairy, corn, starches, and sugars in any form, in any volume. Whenever these things come in, our human bodies are not designed to break those foods down. So anytime they come in, we get slowed down. And this is where something like non-black coffee, that little bit of dairy or a little bit of sugars there, because that becomes a ritual or a habit for people. You could eat 7 days perfectly clean, but that little bit of dairy every morning just shoots your metabolism in the foot. And so basically, instead of, everyone plays this game of minimization. I'm going to steal this from my buddy Kevin, the kid who helped me get the job there. But it's about, people think it's about minimization. And this looks like the women who will eat they'll cut a cookie into quarters, have the quarter of the cookie and think they did a good job. Or, I don't know, a guy having one piece of pizza instead of 4, Yes, if we're looking at the sheer volume of calories and fat and other nutrients that are coming in, yes, I'm not saying that they're not multiplied, but the momentum effect is the same. Whether you have 1 cookie or 4, you get down, right? I'm not saying that it's not 4 times as much bad stuff in there, but momentum, it's a wash. So the mission is not to go and minimize frequently, it's to isolate with clean days on both sides of it. Okay, so what I mean by that is essentially whole cheat days surrounded by whole clean days versus, let's say a sandwich on Monday and then 2 glasses of red wine on Tuesday and then a salad that has blue cheese and, I don't know, quinoa in it the next day. Because these are 3 instances, 3 separate times where you get slowed down. Okay. So what I would argue is that I'd rather see someone, or for some reason this sticks in people's head, I'd rather see you have a king size bag of M&Ms all in one night rather than a handful every night for a week. Even if that handful totaled less M&Ms than that whole bag at once. Yeah. Again, we're looking at momentum. And so if we slow ourselves down once with more junk, I would argue you're going to be far better off if those next, few days can be filled with good stuff, which is like, again, proteins, veggies, fruit, healthy fats, things that are not grain, dairy, corn, starches, sugars. Anything that we can fill our body with to get nutrients from outside of those food groups, your body's able to quickly break those down, pull the nutrients out, and get back to eating up fat. The issue is if we keep throwing a little bit of fat or inflammation on the, essentially onto the fire every single day, is there's no momentum because you're pulling your body out of that. I'm done basically with my chores of breaking food down for the day. Now I can break down pounds of fat or inflammation, all this other stuff. So
it's amazing.
It's just a different way of thinking about it.
Very different. Very different. Kind of all or nothing.
Yeah, exactly. And frankly, again, I'm looking for people to try to keep it to a couple instances a week where we go into those more inflammatory food groups. But what I'd rather see, again, ideally non-consecutive. So ideally not, let's say, Friday night and then all of Saturday. Right. But if someone's going to go and have those cheat days, let's say you were clean from, Thursday and Friday. On Saturday, man, if let's say you're going out with a couple friends, if you're going to have a few beers that night, that's the day, or like, say the morning, to have pancakes and to have on that day the coffee that's fully loaded up just the way you like it, because you're going to slow yourself down later. That's the same day to throw the ice cream in. That's the same day to throw the nachos in or the wings, whatever it is you want, because you're already going to be slowing yourself down later. The catch, though, is that next day better be clean. Yeah. And that's sort of where, not to refute what I just said, but if you go and kind of tell yourself, yeah, I'm going to enjoy myself today, or I'm not going to beat myself up over going to the gym today, is because I know I'm doing that tomorrow. As I know that I'm taking this time. I know that I can do it. Like, for me as the coach, I need to have people see, when I go and have that obnoxious cheat day, how much weight do I gain? How many days does it take to come back off once I've gained it? And once you see that roller coaster ride of it goes up, but it comes back down if I go back to the right stuff, that's how you take the stress out of a cheat day, or like a wedding or something like that, or a holiday like Thanksgiving coming up. We don't fear those isolated occurrences, because that's not the normal. That's not what the average day look like. We know what the average day looks like. So it's really just about making sure, again, that the average day is filled with good stuff, active or not. Really, it's not that it's not important, but it's a far smaller piece of that health pie than I think a lot of people realize.
Wow.
But again, it's not that it's not important. It's obviously great, for a lot of reasons. But if we can just get people comfortable in terms of, I enjoy myself now, I know what the back end work's going to be and what that's going to look like. Again, it needs to be clear and actionable. But as long as that's in place, whether it's like a single holiday like Thanksgiving coming up, or if it's, let's say, the end of the end of the year, if we got all the Christmas, Christmas Eve, Christmas itself, or all of our respective holidays usually are not a singular day event. A lot of work parties coming up. There's more things coming up, especially around this time of year. And a good rule of thumb is, however long you're bad for, it's going to take a little bit longer than that of clean eating to reset from. If you're bad for one cheat day, you might gain 2-3 pounds overnight. 2-3 days later, if you go back to the right stuff, which is, again, proteins, veggies, fruits, nuts and seeds, healthy stuff, you're going to see that, that weight poof off every single time. One of my coworkers, he would go on those all-inclusive Bermuda cruises every single year, and he would go 7 out of 7 days. Again, this is just, if you think about it always from your tummy's perspective, if you got 7 days of crap on top of crap on top of crap on top of crap, he'd gain 10 pounds, 12 pounds easily in that week. And the thing is, though, is he would be like, okay, I work hard, I deserve that trip, and I don't want to worry about what I'm consuming on that trip. And that's how you need to be at certain points in life. But he went and would basically come back, and for about a week and a half it would take him of real clean eating, but it would take him a week and a half to drop that 10-12 pounds in. But it happened every year, and he wouldn't fear going on that vacation and enjoying himself, because he knows what it looks like coming back, and it's not unknown, and it's not scary, it's not stressful. He knows what it is. You go and do that for years and years, you're never going to have a problem on the scale a day in your life.
Wow.
And so the other two quick bullet points while we're on just my golden nuggets, if you will. Intermittent fasting is key. You don't need to do it every single day, but you best believe after cheat days, that fasting window, what it means is that window your body's not essentially taking in food. That's when your body eats up fat. So if you extend that window, you have more time of eating fat, or your body eating fat, versus eating that or breaking down food. So that's an easy one. 8 to 10 hours is exactly right. You can push it. I do think, like, if you're like football Sunday, if it's literally ice cream and nachos and beer and like everything, you can try going till dinner. I don't really think that's necessary, but you can easily get away with like 24-hour fast. It's like, I've read a couple places, like one of those a month. It's probably not a bad idea. A lot of good things happen when the body is not forced to devote all of its resources. It's like a computer. It's very good at one task at a time. If you let it go and do that thing for longer, it's like the longer it's doing it, the exponentially better the result is, rather than it having to keep, like, people deviate its attention back and forth. Even humans don't work well that way. The metabolism doesn't either.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Do you advocate for any longer term fasting? I mean, do you have an opinion about 24 or 48 hour fasts, or is there like is the intermittent fasting like the kind of perfect point?
It's definitely something that's kept me from ever gaining weight. I think they're 48 hours is intense to me. I think that probably is not necessary for very many people very often. I think a day is very reasonable. I think a day after, and you better enjoy that day before it. There's no reason to fast if you didn't just put a bunch of garbage in.
Right.
But there's tons of benefit beyond just scale and weight with that fasting window. Again, hormones, which is something we didn't go a ton into. But as you know, cortisol, the stress hormone, has an immense bearing on the scale, and how people feel. And let's say their friction to losing weight. So something like that, hormones get rehabilitated in that window of not eating. Wow. Growth hormone gets produced when the body is not breaking down food.
Wow.
And so there's a ton of behind the scenes things where, me just never leaving myself time in my lifetime for breakfast. I just never was into it. And I don't get hungry then. I don't eat till 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon. Now I don't expect people to do that. I'm also far more of a night owl. So I'll eat till 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. But definitely, so that's that same principle though applied to longer fasts. It can't be bad. Is I guess where I'm getting at. Gotcha. I'm not sure it's necessary for many people. I wouldn't encourage anyone to do more than 1 or 2 24 or longer hour fast per month. But I also there's no chance there's a downside to it.
And when you say 8 to 10 hours, is that the eating window or is that the fasting window?
That is the eating window.
So you eat within an 8 to 10 hour window. Yes. Okay. Gotcha.
Yes. And for your listeners, that does not matter whatsoever when that starts and ends. It's all relative to when it starts.
Got you. And during that time, can you consume water? Can you consume coffee? Is there anything that's safe to consume?
Yeah. Water, coffee, tea are all fine. You could even throw like Terry Crews, the actor, will throw if you've ever heard of like that bullet coffee, those
bulletproof.
It's like bullet coffee, something like that. But it's basically like you throw a little bit of coconut oil. You could throw coconut oil in your coffee and that doesn't break the fast.
Really?
I don't think apple cider vinegar would break the fast either.
Wow.
There's not a big list of things.
Yeah.
Pink salt, because I'll actually have clients like consume a little bit of pink salt because that's going to help your body absorb the water that's flowing through it, so it doesn't just flush through you. That's something you can ingest, probably helps a little bit keeping you satiated, and does not break the fast either. But really anything that you're chewing is something your body's going to be having to chew through also. So that's a good rule of thumb.
Gotcha. Nice. And you said you had one more bullet point.
I think the last bullet point would just be, this is a far easier said than done thing, especially for women, but removing the stress from the scale, or like at the bottom of the scale, and not letting that dictate future decisions or dictate your mindset for the day.
Wow.
That's an important thing to understand, is that, frankly, it's always going to be a reflection of what you've done over the last couple days. It may not always make sense to you, but I assure you, if we had the ability to crunch the numbers, it would be like an accounting, the balance sheet would always make sense if we could look at it that way. So instead of getting mad that the weight's up and letting that, stress you out, that should be more of, kind of like a wake up call. Like, hey, I did this. This is the result on the scale. What do I do now? Oh, that thing I always do when the scale goes up is jump back to clean eating. That's the cycle. That's the cycle and mindset I want people in long term, and how this thing that's statistically proven to not work long term, I'm able to do with people with staggering consistency, and that being keeping people healthy long term.
That's amazing. Absolutely amazing, man. Well, man, I can't thank you enough for sharing all this information. You are, it's so cool to get a glimpse into what you do and just see how much, what you do encompasses what we teach in mental health. And there's just no difference in any sort of vehicle, whether it's weight gain, feeling better with anxiety, advancing in your career, how the overlap is all there. So it's so great. So most importantly, man, if people want to sign up and get involved with you, where can they find you? I know you run your own company called Essential Health Systems. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so I will fully disclose to all of your listeners, I am a new business owner.
Congratulations, man.
Thank you. It is it's a new thing, so things are slow going as I wear more hats than I'm used to, and get involved with things I'm not familiar with. But the website, I do have a website. It's the name of the company, just essentialhealthsystems.com. Easiest way to reach me would probably be finding me on LinkedIn or Instagram. It's usually just Jefferson Meyer. It can provide links for you if you'd like.
Yeah, definitely. We'll put those links in the description below on the YouTube video.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm happy to field questions for any of your listeners. I have no issue freely dispensing information.
Hit him up on Instagram, private message him, find the contact info on the website. Jefferson, thank you so much, brother. This has been amazing and incredible. I appreciate your time and your articulation. So keep on helping people, man. I really love what you do. Thanks a lot, man.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Here's the
logo. Jefferson Meyer, folks. Thank you guys so much. Remember, no matter what you're going through, whether it's diet, mental health, your career, your family, your relationship, no matter where you are, no matter how long it's been going on, you're never stuck. You might just need some support. I'm Jim from Solutions. Thank you guys so much. Thanks to Jefferson. Lots of love, guys. See you soon.